All right, now Jeff, Greg told us last week what happens at Tokyo Game Show. Basically, day 1, it's open to the press. Day 2 and 3, it's open to the public.
Yeah,
it started with a big keynote address or two. We were speculating about them last week. What happened?
Basically, Nintendo unveiled the controller for the Revolution. I think that's definitely one of the bigger things to happen out of there, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I'd say that's you saw
some
this stuff.
people are interested in it,
And some people aren't so interested in it.
Oh.
All right, Carrie, tell us what is the controller for the Revolution?
It looks like a remote. You use sort of one hand on it. I've got one analog stick. And then you've got this thing you can attach to it. So you can have other peripherals on the side that attach to it. And I guess you can swap it out for a couple different ones. And it's got all kinds of different functions. You've got the laser that goes.
Yeah, so it'll
it
you can sort of point at the screen, so it serves as a pointer, and then it's also got like a gyroscope in it, so it'll detect you twisting and turning and stuff like that.
So it can tell how far, what part of the TV you're pointing at, and how far you are from the screen. So this is basically like taking the place of a mouse in a PC game.
Kind of, or it's like light guns taken to the next extreme
and
level.
And the fishing pole controller and the power glove. And by the way, I love the power glove. It's so bad. But,
now you're playing with power.
But yeah, so it's got this sort of strange like peripheral-ism to it where you're kind of curious because it's not just your default controller, which is an interesting take because if you separate out the regular controller from peripherals or the extra ones you buy on, I would think most people don't usually buy them. I'm a sucker for those traditionally, but I don't think I like the idea of it being the standard controller.
So when everyone first saw this, the first, I think, reaction was, whoa. And then the second reaction was, well, there's no way you're going to play multi-platform games with that thing. But they say there's a solution, right, Jeff?
I mean, more or less. This whole attachment system that they've got, they showed off one that has like an analog stick that you can hook up, so in conjunction with the D-pad that's already on the remote. But presumably, you could actually probably just release a GameCube controller with a gigantic hole in it that you just plug the remote into, and then it works like a real controller.
And there are also actually GameCube controller ports on the Revolution deck itself on the top of it.
Right.
So there's 4 of them there, so,
but that means that you're going to have to have owned a GameCube if you want to, or you're going to have to buy a GameCube controller for your
Or they'll
system.
release, Revolution controllers that are identical or
There's
something
supposedly that remote control thing is supposed to fit in like a standard controller shell, so, you're not going to be totally, out of the loop for like normal games. But, like you guys said, you have to wonder if it doesn't come standard with the system,
Yeah.
Are people really going to develop for that?
It kind of splits the user base right on day one. It's like
right.
if they don't include something like that right out of the box, because then it becomes, well, we have to take into account for the fact that the player might not have any of these attachments. All they have is this remote that has 2 buttons on it. So we have to make sure our game works for that. So, maybe you have 2 of them and you could play a really awesome skiing game, like the Slalom sequel, where you're holding 2 of the controllers and slushing around like that, like ski poles or something.
Well, speaking of splitting, there seems to be kind of like a divide in the office even over reactions to this. There's a nice piece on the site right now where everyone who I think who's back here, their reactions to it, and I'm among them. I didn't write for it, but Bob's among them, and I think our reaction is generally positive. And meanwhile, it seems like the crew coming back from Japan is a little, we'll say, more skeptical.
Yeah, there was a lot of us kind of leaned over a laptop staring at that stuff going, wait, what?
Yeah. Well, the one thing, I'm one of the skeptics, but the one thing I think it proves is that Nintendo kind of knows their place. Not to sound mean or anything. I love Nintendo, but like they know what they have to do, and so they're not competing to be like just another console with another batch of games with another regular controller. It might actually be something where, maybe you pick between the Xbox 360 and the PS3 because, for the most part, aside from exclusives, they're going to kind of be the same sort of system. But then you can pick Nintendo and get the weird system with all the quirky games, and maybe that will work. But I think that depends on how much it's going to cost.
That, and they didn't really show any games for it.
Yeah,
they?
That's kind of the biggest problem is you have this controller and a list of functionality that the controller provides, but then no real clear-cut ideas of how games will use that. It's like...
But that's the same thing that happened with the DS. And I think now we're finally seeing... Like, when the DS came out, we were all like, crazy! And then for a while, there weren't any games that used it, and we were all like, eh. And now we're finally getting these games out that use it really well, like Nintendogs and Owendan and, like, all these games. And I think I have faith that they'll come up with something cool. Will that be enough to sell a whole console? It was enough for me for the DS. Will it be enough for the whole Revolution? I'm not sure.
And what does it spell for third-party support? And does Nintendo
Nothing.
actually care about third-party support anymore? Because it's not like they've had great third-party support for the GameCube. Maybe they're just kind of banking on, well, those guys are going to go do their own thing and make their Grand Theft Auto ripoffs. But if you want to make something crazy, if you want to make, Katamari Damacy with, crazy pointer technology, then come over here.
So, Bob, what's your take on this? We've heard from the two people in Japan.
When I first walked in the office the day that the keynote came, I saw the preliminary pictures before they were announced. And before anyone did any explaining, I'm like, what the hell is that? That's a remote control. I thought it was stupid right off the bat. And then I saw the movie and, the guys, doing the little drum thing and the fishing and the whatever. And I got to thinking a little bit more about it. And I thought, in kind of an ironic way, that maybe you get more PC-style games on the Revolution. You can control, I can see an FPS control using this thing that could really work, that wouldn't suck like the way controllers do now to control FPS games. I can see strategy games where you can actually, click at units and, move them around just like you would with a mouse, and it wouldn't suck.
Except for the part where they're selling it to a generation of kids with arm muscles so weak that they can't point the thing at the screen for longer than 10 minutes at a time.
And that's the thing I brought up. I'm like, am I really going to want to, let's not even talk about a generation of kids whose arm muscles are too weak. Let's talk about the generation of editors in this office whose arm muscles are too
Hey,
weak.
speak for yourself.
Whatever,
I played
man.
lots of Samba de Amigo.
I've been lifting.
I think the system has a lot of potential. I mean, immediately a bunch of us came up with just crazy ideas. Like someone was talking about a Star Wars game where you swing lightsabers at each other. I was thinking of how much fun I had playing that simple little table tennis game in iToy Play 2. Like if you had an online ping pong game going against someone where you're just standing there swinging in your living room, that could be cool.
Hey, we talked about the game remake of Color of Money, right? Or we make a pool game with that thing.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Dibs
Let's do
on
that.
Paul Newman.
Yeah,
But
see, that's kind of the crazy thing is that the system almost seems like they're taking that whole TV game concept in like a programmable direction. Like they have the Dragon Quest game out in Japan where you get a little sword and it plugs right into the TV and you swing the sword in front of the TV. There's a lightsaber one out in Japan that does much the same thing where you're just kind of cutting guys up.
I saw a baseball one.
There's
in
a
Toys
ping
R
pong
Us.
one, a
Yeah.
baseball one. So it almost seems like it's kind of taking that where in a further direction. But at the same time, who knows? There could be like a really awesome boxing game where you hold two of them and shadow box your TV
That'd be cool.
or something.
We'll have to wait and see. Do
Yep.
we know when they'll show us more, Jeff?
No. I mean, you can expect stuff around all the major big game events, so, probably not until E3 at this point. Well, that'll be probably the next major drop of info.
Bummer.
But there'll probably be something between now and then, I'd imagine.